So for a long time I've seen these ultrasonic cleaners that can be used for a lot of different things, and being someone who works on bikes and spends a lot of time restoring old components, I was really curious if something like this was really worth it for bike-specific projects. So I thought I'd test it with some bike parts to find out. This is the Vevor ultrasonic cleaner. Mine's the 10-liter version, but they come in a few different sizes which would all work for any bike shop, only the larger ones can fit more and have this tap on the side that make it a lot easier to drain. Apart from some bad translations and a few warning labels, the machine itself feels surprisingly high quality for its cost, with a full stainless steel finish all around. I've gone through some bins, and starting with the most common items, I have just a regular bike chain. The chain itself is pretty new, but it's got a lot of dirt and sand stuck to the chain oil. Next I have a cassette, which is around 30 years old. I'm not sure if the discoloration is permanent or whether it's a layer that can be scrubbed off. I've never been able to get it clean by hand, so we'll see if the machine makes a difference. Next I want to try some more complicated components. So I've got an old set of front and rear derailleurs. I'm curious to see how these plastics will hold up, and also see how deep of a clean we can get in these tiny hard to reach mechanisms. And finally, I've got an old cup and cone style bottom bracket with a heavy layer of dirt and grease packed into the bearings. I'm just going to put them into the tank exactly like this, and we'll see how they come out. So as I'm loading everything into the basket, I should point out that the 10-liter capacity is referring to the volume of water you can add, and not the amount of stuff you can actually clean. However, you can still fit a lot as long as you're mindful of how you arrange everything. Here I'm just spacing things out sort of in a Tetris fashion so that none of the parts touch. The same way you do loading a dishwasher. I poured about 6 liters of hot water into the machine and then powered it on to set the temperature and time, which I ended up just leaving at the defaults, which was 15 minutes. I'm just using Mech chain degreaser as my solvent. There's other cleaners you can use and probably better ones you should use. However, this is just what I had on hand, and I was pretty confident it wouldn't damage or strip anything away. So now with the water up to temperature, I have to say I wasn't sure what I was expecting the machine to sound like when it was on. I knew it had to make some kind of noise, but I was not expecting how piercing the noise would be through a microphone. Once all the parts were submerged, it was really satisfying to watch the water start to change color as all the dirt and grease and everything else gets scrubbed off. I let it run for 15 minutes, checking on it periodically and rotating the basket, but eventually the water turned completely black before the cycle finished. So pulling them from the tank, they seem to look pretty good, but now I can drain the water to see everything that got left behind. There was a bit of leaking from the valve, but hopefully just a bit more Teflon tape would sort that out. Finally, you can see all that nasty dirt and grime that got cleaned from the part, so it's safe to say it does a good job at cleaning. And you can see the color of the water as I pour it out as well. I can't say I've had results that good cleaning parts by hand. Now it's time to see how everything turned out. The chain is pretty much how I expected. It's completely free of any dirt or oil and doesn't leave behind any residue in your hands. In terms of comparing this to cleaning your chain normally, I think if done regularly, you won't need a machine like this. But if you've got a chain that hasn't been cleaned for a long time, the ultrasonic cleaner is a really good way of bringing it back to its original condition. The cassette, I was a bit more disappointed. I was really hoping that the discoloration would clear up. It could have been that I didn't use a strong enough solvent, or that this cassette is just so far gone that the metal has just turned this color. I think if you have a new cassette, the ultrasonic cleaner would be a good way of presenting it from getting to this point. The derailleurs from the surface don't look too different. Obviously the machine only cleans, it doesn't polish, so for rust and corrosion you're not going to see that much of a difference. However, it did a great job at cleaning up the dirt and grime in those hard to reach places, and this feels a lot more smooth to open and close than it did before. And finally, the bottom bracket bearings. I was really impressed with how these came out, considering how dried and caked on the grease was before. These came out completely spotless and with a restored chrome finish. I think putting these parts through the ultrasonic cleaner before reinstalling with fresh grease would be the best way to improve the pedaling feel on a bike, especially on these older style of bearings. As for the final verdict, clearly all these parts came out really well. I think if you're someone who works a lot on bikes, especially older bikes, an ultrasonic cleaner will really help you out. On the other hand, I'd say if you're just someone looking for a way to deep clean your bike occasionally or clear up corrosion, the ultrasonic doesn't do anything that you couldn't already do by hand with a little more effort. So if you'll use it regularly and you have the space, you should get one, but don't think it's something that's required for every shop. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful if you've been thinking about getting one of these, and remember, at the end of the day, it's just about having fun fixing bikes.